The filming of The Sound of Music is one of the most beloved stories in Hollywood history. The movie is still famous today, loved by millions for its songs, beautiful landscapes, and heartwarming storyline. However, what most people don't know is that behind the scenes there were moments and secrets that would shock anyone who believes everything in the movie was as perfect as it seemed. The cast and crew of The Sound of Music went through some tough and unexpected challenges. Things were not always as smooth as they appeared on screen, and there are some shocking truths that were hidden for many years. For decades, the true story behind the making of this legendary film was kept hidden, but now those untold secrets are coming to light. The movie's cast, who became household names, were not just actors playing roles. They were people with their own personal struggles, fears, and difficult relationships. For example, Julie Andrews, who played the iconic role of Maria, had to face enormous pressure as a young actress suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Everyone expected her to be perfect. But what people didn't know was that during filming she was struggling with her own set of challenges. The stress of the role, combined with the responsibility of portraying such an important character, weighed heavily on her. She was a talented actress, but she was also very young and new to the massive attention that came with the role. The pressure was intense, and she often felt as though she was under a microscope with little room for mistakes. At the same time, Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, had his own challenges. He wasn't exactly thrilled about taking on the role. He had reservations about playing a character in such a family-friendly movie. His experience on set wasn't always as enjoyable as people think. He didn't get along well with some of the other cast members, and he found the whole experience frustrating at times. His frustration was so intense that he later admitted to disliking the film during its production. But despite this, he was still one of the key reasons the movie turned out so great. His performance, though not always appreciated in the moment, became one of the most iconic roles in cinema history. The tension between the two main stars was not the only problem on set. The filming location itself, the stunning Austrian Alps, brought its own set of problems. The location, though beautiful, was cold, challenging to navigate, and incredibly difficult to work in. Many times the actors had to film scenes in the freezing cold, often with no proper heating. This added an extra layer of discomfort and tension to the filming process. Some of the most famous outdoor scenes where the characters sing and dance in the hills were not as carefree as they appeared. The cast and crew had to deal with unpredictable weather, difficult terrain, and constant logistical challenges. This wasn't the picturesque experience many people imagine when they think of The Sound of Music. Behind the scenes, there were also moments of discomfort for the child actors. The children who played the Von Trapp family's kids were beloved by audiences, but the experience of making the film wasn't always as fun as it looked. The child actors faced their own set of struggles. For example, many of them were homesick and missed their families. They were far from home, working long hours, and had little time for play or relaxation. Some of them later admitted that they had a tough time balancing the excitement of being in such a big movie with the reality of being away from their normal lives. The director, Robert Wise, had a unique challenge managing all the different personalities and egos on set. He was responsible for making sure the actors delivered great performances, while also managing the expectations of the producers and the studio. As a director, Wise had to make difficult decisions, and not all of them were easy or popular. For instance, he had to handle conflicts between the actors, manage the grueling filming schedule, and keep the cast motivated when things didn't go as planned. Despite these challenges, he remained calm under pressure, ensuring that the production stayed on track, but even he couldn't escape the tensions that came with such a large, complicated production. The entire cast and crew of The Sound of Music had to navigate a mix of emotions, from frustration and exhaustion to moments of pure joy and excitement. The drama, the behind-the-scenes conflicts, and the pressures of the filming process were a far cry from the joyful, harmonious image of the Von Trapp family that the movie portrays. While The Sound of Music may be remembered as a heartwarming film filled with love and happiness, the truth about what really happened on set is much more complicated. And these secrets, hidden for so long, are finally being uncovered. As more and more details come to light, people are realizing that the making of The Sound of Music was anything but perfect. There were struggles, tensions, and difficulties that no one ever talked about before. Now, looking back, it's hard to imagine the movie without its struggles. But the fact that they went through so much to make it happen only makes the final product that much more impressive. The truth behind the scenes of The Sound of Music is far more fascinating than what people have been led to believe for all these years. The pressure, the challenges, and the personal difficulties faced by the cast and crew only make the movie more extraordinary. It's a testament to their dedication and hard work that The Sound of Music became the timeless classic it is today. There is something about The Sound of Music that has made it a beloved film for generations. But what people don't often realize is that there were some major secrets kept hidden, especially about what really happened on the set. For years these secrets were locked away, with cast members and crew members keeping quiet about what went on behind the scenes. Many of the cast members, in particular, had reservations about revealing what they truly felt about their time making the movie. Now for the first time, some of the shocking behind-the-scenes events are finally coming to light, and the truth is far from what people expected. One of the most surprising aspects of the film's production is how difficult it was for some of the actors to get along. The tension between the cast was not something that was openly talked about at the time. Everyone thought that the movie's family-friendly nature and the beautiful setting would create a warm and happy environment on set, but that was not always the case. Julie Andrews, who became a global star after playing Maria, found herself in a challenging situation. As much as she loved her role, the pressure on her shoulders was immense. She was relatively new to the Hollywood scene, and suddenly she was the lead in one of the biggest films of the decade. The stress of having to be perfect in every scene took a toll on her, and it wasn't always easy for her to navigate the expectations placed on her. But it wasn't just Julie who had a tough time. Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, had a much more complicated relationship with the movie. When he was first cast, he had little enthusiasm for the role. He even admitted years later that he found the movie sappy and didn't understand the hype around it. His lack of interest was evident during the filming, and his frustration sometimes led to conflicts on set. He wasn't shy about expressing his dislike for the overly idealistic and wholesome nature of the film. While Julie Andrews was under pressure to be perfect, Christopher Plummer was often criticized for not embracing the role in the way many people expected him to. He was a serious actor, and being part of a musical film wasn't his idea of an enjoyable time. As the filming progressed, the tension between him and the rest of the cast grew, especially with Julie. The two had very different personalities and approaches to the work. The truth is, they didn't always get along, and their relationship wasn't as friendly as it seemed on screen. There was also tension between the director, Robert Wise, and the rest of the crew. Robert Wise had a reputation for being a perfectionist, and while this helped make the movie as successful as it was, it also created a lot of stress on set. He wanted everything to be perfect, and he was often very demanding of the actors. This made things difficult, especially when the actors were already dealing with the pressures of their roles. As the filming went on, tensions ran high. There were moments when the cast members felt as though they couldn't do anything right. The constant pressure to deliver perfect performances, especially for such a high-profile film, caused frustration that boiled over from time to time. But it wasn't just the actors who had issues. The crew members also faced a great deal of stress. The filming of The Sound of Music was grueling, and the set itself presented many challenges. The location in the Austrian Alps, while stunning, was not an easy place to work. The weather was unpredictable, and filming in the snow and cold was tough for everyone involved. The crew had to deal with freezing temperatures, heavy snow, and difficult conditions while trying to get the perfect shot. Many of the scenes that are now seen as iconic were actually very difficult to film. For example, the famous scene where the children are singing on the hills was not as carefree as it looked. The actors had to endure long hours in the freezing cold while trying to maintain their energy for the song. The weather didn't always cooperate, and sometimes the crew had to wait for hours for the snow to stop falling or for the clouds to clear. It was a tough environment to work in, and not everyone was happy with the conditions. The child actors had their own share of difficulties. Although they were talented and adorable on screen, the experience of filming the movie was not as fun as it seemed. Many of the child actors later revealed that they struggled with homesickness during the long shoot. They were far from their families and spent long hours working on set, often without much time for relaxation or fun. Some of the children admitted that the pressure of having to perform in front of the cameras was overwhelming, and they didn't always enjoy their time on set. Being away from home for such a long time, combined with the tough filming conditions, made it hard for them to fully enjoy the experience. Yet despite these challenges, the child actors managed to deliver performances that would go down in history. Their performances, though difficult to achieve, were truly remarkable considering the struggles they faced behind the scenes. As the filming continued, the personal struggles of the cast members only intensified. It became clear that the making of The Sound of Music was not as magical as it appeared. While the actors and crew were able to keep a professional face for the public, many were dealing with their own personal battles. The constant pressure of making a big movie, coupled with the difficult conditions on set, led to moments of tension and frustration that were never shown in the final film. But despite all the struggles, The Sound of Music still became one of the most successful and beloved films of all time. The tension, the conflicts, and the hidden struggles only added to the magic of the film. It's hard to imagine the movie being anything other than perfect now, but the truth is that it was anything but. The shocking secrets from behind the scenes make the movie even more interesting, and they show just how much effort, determination, and sometimes frustration went into creating this timeless classic. The fact that these secrets are finally being revealed only makes the movie more fascinating. It's a reminder that even the most beloved films have their share of struggles, and it's the strength of the people involved that makes them great, despite the challenges they faced along the way. Behind the charming image of The Sound of Music, with its stunning landscapes, heartwarming family moments, and beautiful songs, there are parts of the story that most people don't know about. For many years, the true struggles and conflicts on the set were kept under wraps. The cast and crew of the movie had to deal with many hidden tensions that no one talked about. Even though the final product was a huge success, the journey to get there was anything but easy. The pressure, the challenges, and the hidden moments of conflict made the process much more complicated than most people could imagine. One of the most surprising things that were hidden for so long was how difficult it was for some of the actors to get along. Julie Andrews, who played the beloved Maria, was under immense pressure to deliver a perfect performance. As a young actress, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The character of Maria was so beloved that it seemed as though Julie had to live up to everyone's expectations. She was new to the kind of fame that The Sound of Music brought her, and this pressure was hard for her to handle at times. Many people didn't know that she struggled with the responsibility of playing such an iconic role. She was determined to make Maria as real and believable as possible, but the constant stress sometimes took its toll on her. She had moments when she felt overwhelmed by the expectations placed on her, and she wasn't sure if she could live up to them. There were even times when she questioned whether she was doing enough. But what makes this even more fascinating is that Julie wasn't the only one who faced pressure. Christopher Plummer, who played the stern yet loving Captain Von Trapp, had a completely different experience on the set. Plummer was a seasoned actor known for his serious roles, and being cast in a family-friendly musical wasn't something that excited him at first. In fact, he openly admitted that he didn't think much of the film and didn't really enjoy making it. He even referred to it as a fairy tale and a musical romp, and he wasn't particularly happy about it. This created an interesting dynamic between him and the rest of the cast, especially with Julie Andrews, who was more enthusiastic about the project. Plummer didn't share the same excitement for the movie, and this caused some tension on set. Despite his reservations, he still delivered a performance that would later be regarded as one of the best in his career. It's hard to imagine The Sound of Music without him, but at the time he wasn't exactly thrilled to be there. But the conflict didn't just stay between the two main stars. There were moments when other cast members felt the strain as well. For instance, the chemistry between the cast was not always as warm as it seemed. It was hard for some of the actors to get along, and the tension grew as the filming progressed. Everyone had their own challenges to face. Some actors were dealing with personal problems, while others were struggling with the tough work schedule and difficult filming conditions. And through all this, the director Robert Wise had to manage everything. He had to keep the movie on track and make sure that the actors delivered great performances, all while handling the growing tensions among the cast. Wise, known for his calm demeanor, had to balance the needs of the actors, the demands of the studio, and the pressure of making a high-profile film. His role as director was more than just guiding the actors, it was about keeping things moving forward while handling everything behind the scenes. Another key aspect of the film that most people don't realize is how hard it was to film in the beautiful but challenging Austrian Alps. The picturesque location that made the movie so visually stunning was not easy to work in. The cold weather, the snow, and the difficult terrain made filming tough for everyone involved. While the stunning views and breathtaking scenery are what many remember from the movie, the reality of shooting in those conditions was far from ideal. The actors had to endure long hours in freezing temperatures, often in snowstorms, and the crew had to work under harsh conditions to capture every scene. It was difficult for everyone, especially the cast, who had to film some of the most memorable moments in cold, uncomfortable weather. They often had to wait for the weather to clear before filming could begin, and at times the cold made it nearly impossible to stay warm. The actors were not always able to stay in the comfort of heated trailers between shots, and they had to tough it out in the freezing conditions. And then there were the children who played the Von Trapp kids. Many people think of the children as being part of a fun, family-friendly set, but the truth was much different. The child actors, who were very young at the time, had to deal with their own set of challenges. Being away from home for so long, working long hours and dealing with the demands of acting in a big movie was difficult for them. They were often homesick, missing their families and the comforts of home. Some of the children later revealed that the pressure to act in such an important movie made them feel nervous and stressed. It was hard for them to balance their acting careers with the normal joys of childhood. They were often expected to be professional and deliver their lines perfectly, even when they were feeling exhausted or homesick. The filming process was much more grueling for the children than most people realized. Despite these challenges, the cast and crew of The Sound of Music worked hard to make sure the movie was a success. The struggles, the tensions, and the hardships they faced during filming were hidden from the public. Everyone was so focused on the movie's charm and the performances that they didn't see the real challenges the team was dealing with behind the scenes. But now, as these secrets are finally being revealed, we can understand just how much the cast and crew sacrificed to make the movie a reality. The struggles they faced only add to the depth of the film's legacy. It's a reminder that behind every successful movie there are often untold stories of hardship and difficulty. It's incredible to think that despite the tensions, the struggles, and the cold, the final result turned out to be so magical. The Sound of Music became an iconic movie that touched the hearts of millions, and the cast and crew's hard work paid off in the end. However, the real story behind what happened on set is far more complicated and interesting than most people could imagine. The drama, the struggles, and the moments of tension have finally come to light, and they show just how much went into creating this unforgettable film. The fact that these stories are now being shared makes the legacy of The Sound of Music even more fascinating and unforgettable. When people think of The Sound of Music, they often imagine a perfect, harmonious world. They picture the beautiful Austrian Alps, the joyful music, and the sweet family moments that brought warmth to their hearts. However, there's a side of the story that remains hidden, one filled with tension, difficult working conditions, and the hard reality that not everything was as peaceful as it seemed. For years, the true struggles of those involved in the making of the film were kept quiet. The cast and crew faced obstacles, some of which they would have preferred to keep to themselves. Now, after all these years, the untold stories are beginning to surface, revealing the real challenges that made the creation of The Sound of Music much more complicated than anyone realized. One of the most surprising aspects of the production was how hard it was for the cast to stay motivated at times. Many people believe that everyone involved in the movie was excited and eager to be part of such an iconic project. However, the truth is that many of the cast members had their own personal struggles during the filming. Julie Andrews, who played Maria, became an instant star because of the movie. However, the pressure of living up to the high expectations placed on her was more than anyone could have imagined. As a young actress, Julie felt an enormous amount of responsibility to get everything right. She was in the spotlight for the first time and was expected to carry the film with her performance. The weight of this responsibility affected her in ways that many people didn't realize. She struggled with self-doubt and felt that the world was watching her every move. The character of Maria was beloved by millions, and Julie was determined to do justice to the role. However, the constant pressure took a toll on her, and there were moments when she felt unsure of herself. Even though she tried to stay positive and focused, there were times when she couldn't escape the stress of trying to be perfect. Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, had a completely different experience. When he was first cast in the role, he didn't share the excitement that others did. In fact, he was not particularly fond of the idea of being in a musical, especially one as wholesome and family-friendly as The Sound of Music. He even admitted that he thought the film was silly and that he didn't understand why people were so excited about it. His attitude toward the film led to some friction on set, especially with Julie Andrews, who was deeply invested in the project. Plummer's lack of enthusiasm was apparent, and it caused some tension between him and the other cast members. Despite this, he went on to give a memorable performance as Captain Von Trapp, one of his most iconic roles. Over time, he became more accepting of the film, but in the beginning it wasn't something he enjoyed doing. The fact that Plummer, one of the most respected actors of his time, wasn't excited about being part of the movie is a surprising twist that many didn't know. His frustration with the role was often hidden from the public, and only years later did he admit that he didn't have the same love for the movie as the rest of the world did. The tension between the two main stars was not the only issue on set. The filming location, while beautiful, came with its own set of challenges. The Austrian Alps, which are now synonymous with the movie, presented a variety of problems for the cast and crew. The weather was unpredictable, and the freezing temperatures made it difficult to film some of the movie's most memorable scenes. The actors had to endure long hours in the cold, and at times they were forced to film in snowstorms or freezing rain. Despite the beautiful scenery, the harsh conditions took a physical toll on everyone involved. The cast had to fight against the cold, exhaustion, and the difficulty of filming in such a remote location. The weather often delayed production, and the cast had to wait for hours for the weather to improve before they could continue shooting. These conditions made the work much harder than anyone could have imagined. Adding to the difficulty was the fact that the crew had to work with limited resources in the middle of the Alps. Filming in such an isolated location meant that they didn't always have access to the usual comforts and conveniences. They had to adapt to the difficult conditions and make do with what they had. The crew worked tirelessly to ensure that the scenes were shot perfectly, despite the freezing weather and the unpredictable nature of the location. The constant battle against the elements made filming extremely stressful, and it was a challenge for everyone involved. However, the fact that the movie turned out as well as it did in such difficult circumstances is a testament to the dedication and hard work of the entire crew. The difficulties they faced only made the final product even more impressive. The child actors who played the Von Trapp children also had their own challenges to deal with. While they may have seemed cheerful and carefree on screen, the reality of being part of such a big movie was not as easy as it appeared. Many of the child actors were away from their families for long periods of time, and the experience of filming in a foreign country was overwhelming for them. They worked long hours, often under stressful conditions, and many of them were homesick. The pressure to perform in such a high-profile movie was difficult for them to handle, and they sometimes struggled to balance their childhood with their responsibilities as actors. The children who played the Von Trapp family were beloved by audiences, but the reality of their experience on set was much harder than most people realized. The stress of working in a foreign country far from their families and the pressure to act in such an iconic film took a toll on them. The tension and struggles on set didn't just come from the actors. The director, Robert Wise, had his own set of challenges to face. As the leader of the production, he was responsible for managing the entire project. He had to make sure that everything was going smoothly and that the actors were delivering the best performances. Wise had a reputation for being a perfectionist, and he worked tirelessly to make sure the film was everything it needed to be. However, this perfectionism led to moments of stress for the cast, who sometimes felt like they couldn't live up to the high expectations. Wise's demand for perfection often created additional pressure for the actors, especially when they were already dealing with the strain of filming in tough conditions. The delicate balance of keeping the production moving while managing the emotional and physical stress of everyone involved was not an easy task for the director. Despite all the struggles, the cast and crew of The Sound of Music managed to create one of the most beloved films of all time. The fact that they faced so many challenges only made the final product more remarkable. The movie's success wasn't just a result of its beautiful music and stunning visuals, it was a product of the hard work, dedication, and perseverance of everyone involved. The tension, the stress, and the difficulties faced by the cast and crew made the making of The Sound of Music a far more complicated story than anyone realized. But in the end, all the hardships paid off, and the film became a timeless classic. The secrets from the set that are finally being revealed only make the movie more fascinating and show how much went into creating this unforgettable piece of cinema. When the cast and crew of The Sound of Music began filming, no one could have predicted the hidden struggles and the untold stories that would unfold. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The movie was set in one of the most beautiful locations in the world, the Austrian Alps, and the actors played their parts so well that it seemed like they were having the time of their lives. But behind the camera, the truth was much more complicated. What the world didn't know at the time were the secrets and challenges that came with making this iconic movie. It wasn't all singing and dancing, it was hard work, long hours, and in some cases difficult relationships that would later become a part of the movie's legacy. The actors who gave such memorable performances on screen had a much different experience behind the scenes. Julie Andrews, who played Maria, was the heart of the film. The world saw her as the perfect and wholesome character who brought warmth to the screen. However, what many people didn't realize was how difficult it was for her to step into such a large role. Julie was a relatively new actress in Hollywood when she was cast in The Sound of Music. She had already made a name for herself with her role in Mary Poppins, but The Sound of Music was a much bigger project. She had to carry the entire movie on her shoulders, and the pressure to perform perfectly every time was overwhelming. Julie, known for her grace and charm, had to constantly remind herself to keep going despite the growing weight of the expectations placed on her. The pressure from the studio, the director, and even the fans made it hard for Julie to fully enjoy the process of making the movie. There were moments when she felt like she wasn't doing enough, and it affected her ability to stay confident in her performance. Julie later revealed that at times she felt more nervous than people realized. The idea that The Sound of Music would become a worldwide hit wasn't something that could be predicted, and Julie had to work hard to overcome her doubts. Despite the struggles, she delivered a performance that would go down in history, but it came at a personal cost that few knew about at the time. Then there was Christopher Plummer, the man who played the stern and disciplined Captain Von Trapp. His experience was quite different from Julie's. Plummer, who had already built a successful career in theater and film, did not initially share the same enthusiasm for the movie. In fact, he was openly critical of the film, calling it silly and expressing his dislike for the overly idealistic nature of the story. Plummer's feelings about the movie were far from positive, and it created tension between him and the rest of the cast. While Julie Andrews was committed to her role, Plummer was not as passionate about the project. His frustration with the script and the tone of the film was evident, and it led to moments of conflict between him and his co-stars. The tension between the two main stars was something that wasn't widely known, and it made the on-set dynamics more complicated than people might expect. Despite the difficulties, Plummer's performance as Captain Von Trapp became iconic. Over time, he came to appreciate the film's success, but in the beginning he was not happy about being involved in what he considered a family film. The relationship between Julie and Christopher wasn't the only challenge on set. The harsh filming conditions, especially in the Austrian Alps, made it difficult for everyone. The weather was unpredictable, and it wasn't always easy to capture the beautiful scenes that the movie is known for. The cast and crew had to endure long hours in the freezing cold, often in snowstorms. They would wait for hours, hoping the weather would improve enough for filming to continue. The cold was so intense that the actors had to wear multiple layers of clothing to stay warm, and sometimes they even had to film in heavy snow, making it harder to perform their scenes. This added an extra layer of stress to the production, as the constant battle against the elements delayed filming and pushed the cast and crew to their limits. The challenging conditions weren't easy for anyone involved, and the long hours in the cold made it hard for the actors to stay energized. Yet despite these challenges, they pressed on, determined to make the movie as good as possible. The child actors who played the Von Trapp children also faced difficulties during the filming. Many of them were very young at the time, and being part of such a big movie meant they had to spend long hours away from their families. It was tough for them to balance the demands of acting with the desire to be kids. They had to learn their lines, sing their songs, and perform, all while dealing with the stresses of being on a movie set. The reality of being away from home for so long was hard for many of them, and some of the children admitted to feeling homesick and overwhelmed. They were expected to perform perfectly, but they were still children, and the pressures of filming sometimes made it hard for them to enjoy the experience. The young actors played their parts so well that it was hard for audiences to imagine the challenges they faced. But looking back, it's clear that their journey was much more difficult than people realized. And then of course there was the director, Robert Wise. Wise had a reputation for being a perfectionist, and he applied this standard to every aspect of the film. He demanded the best from his actors even when they were exhausted, and this led to moments of tension on set. The actors, already dealing with the pressures of their roles and the tough conditions, found it hard to meet Wise's high expectations. Wise's insistence on perfection often created stress for the cast, but it was also one of the reasons the film turned out to be so successful. The director's ability to push the actors to deliver their best performances is what helped bring the movie's magical moments to life. However, the tension between the perfectionist director and the exhausted cast made for a difficult working environment at times. The cast members later revealed that the constant demand for excellence was overwhelming and sometimes led to frustration on set. But despite these struggles, Robert Wise was able to steer the film to success. His dedication to making the film as perfect as possible paid off, and The Sound of Music went on to become one of the most beloved films in history. What makes all of this even more interesting is that despite the challenges and tensions, The Sound of Music was able to maintain its charm and warmth. The struggles of the cast and crew, the difficulties they faced in harsh weather, and the personal conflicts that arose behind the scenes were never fully revealed until many years later. The fact that the movie still became a massive success is a testament to the resilience of the people involved. They were able to overcome personal differences, difficult filming conditions, and the weight of expectations to create something that would live on for generations. The film's timeless appeal is a direct result of the hard work and determination of everyone involved, despite the secrets and struggles that took place behind the scenes. These hidden stories make The Sound of Music even more fascinating. The struggles, the pressure, and the tensions only add to the magic of the movie. As the secrets are revealed, it becomes clear that the making of the film was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. But it's precisely because of these challenges that The Sound of Music became the masterpiece it is today. It's a reminder that behind every iconic film there are untold stories of perseverance, hard work, and the sometimes hidden struggles that help bring the final product to life. The making of The Sound of Music was filled with countless moments that were not as perfect as they appeared on screen. Everyone involved in the film had their own personal challenges, and many of these struggles stayed hidden for years. As the cast and crew worked together in the picturesque Austrian Alps, there was a side to the story that no one saw. While the audience was swept away by the film's joyful songs and beautiful scenes, behind the scenes the cast was dealing with personal doubts, frustrations, and tensions that made the production far more difficult than anyone could have imagined. The truth about what really happened on the set of The Sound of Music is only now coming to light, and these secrets only add to the film's allure. One of the most surprising facts about the making of The Sound of Music is how long it took to film. Many people assume that a film of this magnitude with such a massive production team and talented cast would move quickly. But in reality, the filming process was much slower than expected. There were several delays that caused frustration among the crew and cast. One of the main reasons for these delays was the weather. Filming in the Austrian Alps meant that the crew had to deal with unpredictable weather conditions. On some days, snowstorms would hit, making it impossible to continue filming. This caused long breaks between scenes, and the crew had to wait for the weather to improve before they could resume shooting. The uncertainty of the weather meant that the cast had to remain flexible and often work long hours to catch up on filming when conditions finally allowed them to work. The delays also added extra stress to everyone involved in the production. The pressure to finish the film in a timely manner was growing, but the weather kept getting in the way. The crew worked tirelessly to get the best possible shots, but nature seemed to have its own plans. The delays caused frustration, and at times tensions on set were high. Everyone was eager to see the film finished, but the constant interruptions made it feel like the project might never get done. In addition to the weather delays, the filming locations presented their own set of challenges. The beautiful but remote locations in the Alps were stunning to look at, but they also posed logistical problems. The crew had to transport all of the equipment, including cameras, lights, and sound equipment, up to these remote areas. This was not an easy task, and it took a lot of time and effort to make sure everything was set up for filming. The remote locations also meant that the crew had limited access to supplies, and it was often difficult to find the necessary materials for the production. The location was far from any major cities, and this meant that the crew had to make do with what they had. It wasn't always easy to get the resources they needed, and this added another layer of difficulty to the already complicated production. Filming in such a beautiful but challenging environment meant that the crew had to work much harder than they had originally anticipated. Despite these difficulties, the breathtaking scenery of the Alps added a unique element to the film, making it an unforgettable experience for everyone involved. Amidst all of the technical challenges and production delays, there were also the personal struggles of the cast and crew that were not immediately apparent. Julie Andrews, the star of the film, was under immense pressure to deliver a performance that would meet the expectations of the studio, the director, and the audience. Though she was known for her charm and elegance, Julie struggled with self-doubt during filming. She was aware that The Sound of Music would be one of the most important roles of her career, and the pressure to get everything right was overwhelming. Julie later revealed that there were moments when she felt like she was failing. She feared that she might not live up to the role of Maria, a character that would soon become beloved by millions. The thought of disappointing her fans and the people she was working with was a constant source of anxiety for her. Despite these fears, Julie pushed through and gave one of the most iconic performances in cinema history. Her ability to stay positive and keep going despite the internal struggles she faced was one of the driving forces behind the success of The Sound of Music. Christopher Plummer's experience on the set was quite different. From the beginning, he was not as enthusiastic about the project as the rest of the cast. Plummer had already established himself as a respected actor in film and theater, and he didn't see the appeal of being in a musical. He even described the script as silly and found it hard to connect with the material. Plummer's reluctance to be part of the film created tension on set, especially with Julie Andrews, who was deeply invested in making the film a success. While Julie was fully immersed in her role, Plummer struggled to find joy in his character, Captain Von Trapp. His frustration was apparent, and it made working together a challenge at times. However, as filming progressed, Plummer began to appreciate the film more, especially as it became clear that the movie was going to be a huge success. His attitude toward the project changed, but it took some time for him to come around. In the end, Plummer's performance as Captain Von Trapp became one of the most memorable in his career. Despite the rough start. Despite the challenges faced by the main stars, there were other behind-the-scenes issues that made the production more difficult. The child actors who played the Von Trapp children were also dealing with their own set of struggles. Many of them were very young when they began filming, and the experience of being away from their families for such a long time was difficult for them. The children had to spend long hours on set, learning their lines, singing their songs, and performing scenes. While they may have looked happy and carefree on screen, the reality of being part of such a big production was overwhelming for many of them. They were away from their families, and the pressure to perform was immense. Some of the children even admitted to feeling homesick during the filming process. Despite these struggles, the child actors managed to give heartwarming performances that made the Von Trapp family feel real to audiences. Their ability to overcome their challenges and deliver such believable performances is a testament to their talent and resilience. The tension on set wasn't just a result of personal struggles, it also came from the high expectations placed on everyone involved. Robert Wise, the director, was known for being a perfectionist. He pushed the cast and crew to their limits to ensure that every scene was as perfect as possible. While this helped elevate the quality of the film, it also created a stressful working environment. The actors, who were already dealing with their own pressures, had to meet Wise's demanding standards. There were moments of frustration when the actors felt that they couldn't do enough to meet the director's expectations. But despite the challenges, Robert Wise's leadership helped bring the best out of everyone involved. His dedication to making the film the best it could be is one of the reasons The Sound of Music has remained such an iconic film. Looking back, it's clear that the making of The Sound of Music was a much more complex and difficult process than anyone could have predicted. The hidden struggles, the personal conflicts, and the technical challenges all played a role in shaping the film that we know and love today. The fact that the movie became such a massive success is a testament to the hard work and dedication of everyone involved. The Sound of Music will always be remembered for its beautiful songs, stunning scenery, and heartwarming story. But now, with these hidden stories being revealed, it's even more fascinating to see how much effort went into making this unforgettable film.